Unknown. Written by Divide. Chapter 9. Disgust. The blue-green alien looked up at me, past my outstretched hand, golden eyes wide with curiosity, shock, and wonder. It surreptitiously reached for the Rubik's Cube with spasmodic bursts of speed and abrupt stops, its line of sight altering between the multicolored block and my helmet. A few centimeters before making contact, the alien stopped as if blocked by an invisible barrier. It glanced at me once more. I adjusted the cube in my hand, holding it with only a few fingers. I brought it a bit closer, trying to instill the message that it was a gift. After taking a deep breath, the alien grabbed the Rubik's Cube out of my hand, meaning that my point must have been translated. It sat and held the cube carefully, almost like it might explode, studying it intently. Upon closer inspection, the alien seemed to realize that the block was meant to be turned, and proceeded to do just that, rotating the sides at an alarming speed. I wondered at this. This was the second time I have witnessed one of them using their appendages to manipulate objects with finesse. The first was when they gave Catherine medical attention, yet how they managed to do this was a complete mystery to me. Their legs all ended in a simple hoof that had no outstanding characteristics, which implied they could not use them as graspers. The rapid twists and turns that the alien was performing, however, nullified that implication. It seemed that nothing could be taken at face value. All of my questions brought more questions. When the gray-horned escort spoke up and made a subtle motion towards me, one that I wasn't supposed to have noticed, the blue-green one stopped fiddling with the Rubik's Cube and disappeared briefly, returning with a bag slung over one side. They shared a few more words, glanced at me, then the blue one nodded and stepped outside, closing the door behind it. Almost immediately, the escorts began walking back the way we came, the blue-green one walking between them. I followed in their footsteps a few paces back, glad that they were all in front of me now, but wary of where we were going. I had no idea where they were leading me, if the last stop wasn't our final destination. I expected us to return through the market area, but as we approached, the three aliens took a turn down a cramped, compact alleyway amid several small buildings. I inwardly sighed and followed them down the path. After a particularly tight squeeze through the jutting, unsymmetrical dwellings where my shoulder ground against a wall, I heard an echoing squeak just behind me. A sharp intake of breath followed soon afterward. I twisted my neck to get a better look, but all I saw was a flash of color as a window was shut and the curtains were drawn hastily across. I kept walking. The terminus was revealed when the three aliens came to a stop in front of a medium-sized building that was slightly apart from the others. The overall design was different than much of the village. An aura of venerability surrounded it, making it seem older somehow, even though I could see no degradation of the materials used to construct it. When the aliens walked up the steps leading to the wooden double door and knocked, I followed. Just as I climbed up the last step, the doors were opened from within. The opener was tan in color and had steel-gray hair. A pair of glasses rested on its snout, and aged crinkles were visible around its eyes. The alien smiled when it saw its kin, but the smile vanished when it saw me. After taking a deep breath, it nodded in motion for us to enter. I had some trouble fitting through the doorway, but after ducking underneath the doorframe, I was rewarded with a ceiling high enough that I could stand straight and not have my head scrape against it. I quickly glanced around. The room was large and vaguely dome-shaped with aliens of varying colors milling about. Most were carrying either papers or books with unfamiliar characters, although one was carrying a tray with various types of foods piled high. To their credit, although most glanced over, very few stopped and stared when they saw me. All of the aliens... Aliens. I was getting very tired of using that word. They were extraterrestrial to me, but did I have any right to call them aliens if I was the visitor? What else would I call them? I thought about what Catherine had called them. Ponies. She had said they looked like alien ponies, though distinguishing them from the ones on Earth seemed moot. Ponies it was. My vision drifted to the long, low-lying table situated in the center of the room. Some strange-looking chairs were placed systematically along it, and a single pony sat in the middle with heaps of paper surrounding it. It was a deep, vibrant purple, and its eyes were glued to a page directly in front of it. I noticed that it had both wings and a horn, something none of the others that I had seen possessed, as well as a crown-like ornament resting on its head. Royalty? There was something special about this one. I could feel it. There were questions to be had and answers to be provided. Finally. I walked forward, my boots thundering on the creaking wooden floor. All other noise ceased. The aliens scrambling about moved like ghosts. I felt their eyes boring holes into my back as I stopped directly across the purple pony. After I stood there for a few seconds, unmoving, it finally looked up from its all-important paper. A look of surprise was wiped away by a cheerful, ecstatic grin. It looked down at the piece of paper once more, then closed its eyes and furrowed its brow, as if in deep thought. What happened next can only be described as fantastical. A small spear of translucent light began to grow from the alien's horn, which expanded until it fully covered its head, much like my own helmet. But it didn't stop there. The spear kept increasing in size until the edge of it made contact with my armor. I felt a strange tingle when it touched, yet nothing when it passed harmlessly through my body, doing so as if it was immaterial. Before long, a large area around the table was encompassed within the dome of light.
Hello? Can you understand me?
My head twisted so quickly towards the source of the words that I felt my neck crack. The voice was spoken in my native tongue, unfamiliar and feminine, came from a purple pony sitting across from me.
I'll take that as a yes.
The pony, a she if the voice was anything to go by, continued.
My deepest apologies in regards to the delay of this meeting, visitor. It's certainly been a process setting up a proper location here in Ponyville, but, well, here we are. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce myself.
She jumped to her feet and bowed formally, raising a leg to her chest.
My name is Twilight Sparkle, Princess of Equestria. It is with great honor that I bid you a proper welcome and extend a hoof of friendship.
Her leg remained outstretched towards me. Numbly, I grabbed the hoof as gently as I could manage and shook it. All of this information suddenly thrust upon me after such a long drought made my brain go into overdrive, neurons firing like automatic weapons. This Twilight Sparkle was speaking to me as if I was a revered guest, a dignitary, an ambassador. Did they truly think that the crash was our landing sequence? No, they couldn't have. They've seen the mess of the interior. What did they think my purpose here was? Then, an emissary of my entire race? How could I explain that Catherine and I were trapped here without escape? And if I could, what would they think of their revered visitor when they knew he was stranded? I shook my head and dispelled the rapid-fire thoughts. Despite the gold mine of knowledge I had been bestowed with, there was still more to acquire. I would process this later. Reaching towards the base of my neck, I unclasped the base of my helmet and removed it slowly. I placed it on the table and took a deep breath before speaking. You can call me Six, I replied, making eye contact with Twilight Sparkle. To her credit, she didn't look away, even after she revealed another important piece of information.
I must ask for forgiveness, but unfortunately, our conversations are regulated to being one way for the time being. The spell that you've seen around you,
she motioned towards the purple dome,
doesn't have the capability to translate your language. Yet, I'll take some more time until we find the correct iteration, which is why we have a large amount of staff working on solving this conundrum as quickly as possible. Again, we're very sorry about this, visitor. Please don't be offended.
I quickly shook my head in an answer. After seeing that it was still only Twilight Sparkle and I alone at the table, I motioned towards the empty seats. Thankfully, my question was interpreted correctly.
The members of the council should be arriving here shortly.
Twilight Sparkle sighed with equal amount of relief and anxiousness.
You came earlier than we intended, visitor. We didn't expect you to be the one initiating contact, and we were thrown for a bit of a loop.
She smiled nervously.
I'm sorry. I'm talking too much, aren't I? I know it's supposed to be my job and all, but still, I'm acting more nervous than when I received my wings.
I didn't understand, so I shook my head again. After deciding that I could use a break from the standing, I looked at the chair across from the purple pony. It was many sizes too small, even if I could figure out how I was supposed to sit in it. I slid out of the way and kneeled in front of the table instead. Even kneeling, I was still looking over Twilight. I folded my arms and settled in to wait. When the members of the council had all arrived, the introductions began immediately. I was familiar with a couple of them already. The council consisted of Applejack, who was the orange pony that ran the fruit stand, and, I learned, a nearby farm which produced the delicious fruit. Rainbow Dash, a blue pony with wings who I didn't recognize, although her multicolored hair was strangely familiar, was in charge of something called the Weather Patrol. Filthy Rich, a dirt-colored pony whose ancestors were apparently one of the founding families of the town I was in. Cheerilee, who was the teacher of the younger ponies and a slightly brighter purple than Twilight Sparkle. And finally, Lila Heartstrings, who was the blue-green pony responsible for actively trying to understand and welcome me since the crash. She repeatedly thanked me for my gift, saying that she didn't deserve it. All I could do was shake my head, trying to insist otherwise. While not difficult names to remember, they were certainly strange. and I was glad they provided a few pieces of paper and a writing utensil. A reference sheet was exactly what I needed, so I wrote down every scrap of information I acquired. Strangely, there was only one male, this filthy rich, amongst the seated ponies. Maybe they had a matriarchal society. I'd have to ask when I could. Even odder was they referred to themselves as ponies, their own word, not mine, which was exactly what Catherine thought they were at first. Was that a coincidence, or was this spell simply translating words that already made sense to me? What was this spell anyway? This Spear of Light was completely foreign. I'd never seen anything like it previously. Instead of raw strength and technology, which were both quite lacking from what I had seen, it seemed they had these spells to compensate. I pondered how many they had access to, and the specifications of what each did. Perhaps they weren't as valuable as I previously thought. My musings were interrupted when Twilight Sparkle cleared her throat. Immediately all the ponies who were not sitting at the table began filing out every which way. In less than 15 seconds, they had all dispersed.
Now that every pony has made their introductions, we can get started with the discussion. I'd like to thank you again, visitor, for choosing to participate in humbling us with your presence.
I snorted. Others being humbled in my presence? I never thought I'd see the day. Twilight Sparkle took no notice of the noise I made, however. After consulting a clipboard in front of her, she continued.
Lyra, would you like to start? I know your questions have been bothering you ever since you set foot into the Star Traveler.
All eyes turned, including mine, turned towards Lyra Heartstrings, who had been idly fiddling with the Rubik's Cube. She swallowed nervously before nodding.
I was wondering, visitor, if your friend has recovered from their grievous wounds. Both myself and Fluttershy have been worried sick that we didn't do enough. They are okay, right?
I nodded. After thinking for a second, I used two of my fingers and walked them along the table.
They have recovered enough to walk?
I nodded again. Lyra sighed with relief.
That is very good to hear. I'll let Fluttershy know as soon as the meeting is over. And if there's anything else...
I met her gaze and nodded slowly. Once.
Good. Great.
Lyra paused for a moment with her mouth open and closed it.
I have 100 questions, but they can wait until the important stuff. The important stuff like the dust cloud hanging over our heads?
Interrupted Rainbow Dash.
Are the things in the Everfree going crazy because something fell out of the sky on top of them? How about those for a start? Dash!
Exclaimed Twilight Sparkle, a look approaching horror on her face. Rainbow Dash grunted.
Sorry, Twilight. Been a stressful couple of days, that's all.
Janet yet looked at me in the eye, even during an earlier outburst.
There's a storm coming,
she began, staring at the table.
Big one. Big enough that the whole patrol can't steer it away. And when it gets here, it'll rain mud for a week. All the crops will be ruined. Some of the roofs might collapse. Every pony's gonna be miserable, dirty, and brown.
Filthy Rich coughed.
No offense, Rich.
None taken. How long until the storm reaches Ponyville? Rainbow Dash tapped the table a few times with a huff.
A few days. A week at most.
She turned towards me, her eyes hard but cautious.
I'm sure you didn't mean to cause us problems, visitor, but you've given us one heck of a big mess to clean up. There are a bunch of ponies, me included, who would have preferred if you never showed up in the first place.
They had no idea I wished for the same thing, and I had no way to tell them, so I did the only thing I could do. I nodded. It was going to be a long meeting. Just a quick one today. As all unknowns are, they're typically around 13-15 minutes or so. But I am working on a Diaries of a Madman to be coming out either tomorrow or the next day. I don't know for sure. But what I do know for sure is the generosity of my Patreons. Thank you Squall Windfeather, Juan de la Paz, Starlight Blaze, Dreamless Portal, and Rainflicker. My two Patreons, Sword Brother and Mordred, Danish Dash, Nocturne, Solus, RD Bryant, Captain BlueShadow, HKH4AK Texture, and the Animated Ghost. And of course a large thank you to Silent Titan. I appreciate your guys' support so much and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.